China just accused America of seizing 125,000 Bitcoin. I know how crazy this sounds because this is potentially the craziest piece of news that I have seen in a very long time, but we're going to have to break it down. We're going to have to explain what exactly was the report that China's, you can see it right here, Emergency Response Center published this morning that we're going to be breaking down. But I think this story is going to be a little bit deeper than this. We've got some really interesting things to look at here because let's not forget about the Jack Ma connection. I think there's a very interesting connection that most people are simply not talking about with this story. The gentleman who, of course, let's just say it diplomatically, disappeared for a number of months, if not years, in China, has mysteriously reappeared. And guess what? Now he's buying and creating a strategic crypto reserve company. This story is a little bit of a deep one. There's a lot of strange things going on between America and China that I want to try to break down for you guys today. I think the best place to start this story is probably what a billionaire and CEO of Pantera Capital just said about America and China and this strategic Bitcoin arms race that I think we are seeing now begin to accelerate here. So let's listen into what he said.
Pretty obvious that the countries that are adversaries of the U.S. will ultimately buy Bitcoin and potentially other coins, but I would say at least start with Bitcoin. And so I think there's going to be an arms race, right? And there'll be like Dr. Strangelove, strategic mineshaft gap, right? Like it's going to be a real race. And as you know, there's only 21 million. And if a bunch of people all want to buy 1 million each, it's not enough to go around, right? And there again, that's why I'm so bullish, because there's just not enough Bitcoins to satisfy countries' desires. I think the U.S. has 200,000 Bitcoins just, from confiscations, kind of a random.
And China has roughly the same, I think.
Yeah, and China has roughly the same. No, no problem seeing them wanting to buy 1 million Bitcoins. It's still tiny compared to their balance sheets, budgets, all that stuff. And so if you have 2, 3, 4, like say the GC wants to buy 1 million, China wants to buy 1 million, maybe Russia wants to buy some, US, like it's going to squeeze up like a watermelon seed.
Absolutely, it's going to squeeze up like a watermelon seed. I agreed with you there, Dan. I think things are going to get really spicy. And that's because I think this nation-state Bitcoin race is now, I think it's being confirmed. I think it started. And I think the report we're going to be breaking down today confirms especially that. Let's have a look at what actually happened. So I wasn't joking in the introduction. China's National Computer Virus Emergency Response Center, the CVERC, said in a report quietly released on Sunday that the U.S. Department of Justice's seizure of the funds were supposedly connected to a nation-state level hacking organization. Now that is a mouthful, but this is kind of insane because we can see open source blockchain forensics from Arkham Intelligence and others are actually claiming the opposite. They are saying that the wallets that mysteriously lost 125,000 coins, they were compromised due to weak random number generators inside the devices and not a state-led attack. So again, this is strange. This is interesting. We can see something that is true is we can see that these wallets have been tracked and around $13 billion of Bitcoin has moved from these wallets that were supposedly connected to a Chinese mining pool in 2020. So you can see this is the investigative deep dive that I was following on Twitter today. Look at all these wallets. Minus 3,000 Bitcoin, minus 120,000 Bitcoin. There was, from what I found, about 127,000 Bitcoin tied up in these wallets associated with this Chinese mining pool, which again, it's really, it's just another one of those things that really makes you ask the question, what's happening? Are nation states dumping Bitcoin on the open market? Again, just questions. I don't have any proof of any of that. But what I do think is absolutely fascinating is the fact that we now have, I think, more confirmation that it is not just North Korea out there with a state-led hacking team trying to steal Bitcoin from the biggest holders around the world. Again, think about this. Do you think it's a coincidence that, again, hypothetically, this 127,000 Bitcoin was actually stole from an American nation state-backed cybersecurity team? If it is true, do you think it's a coincidence they targeted a Chinese mining pool of 127,000 coins? I don't know. I don't think they're targeting Auntie Jane or Uncle Bob with their 0.1 Bitcoin on Coinbase. I think there's a reason why they're going after these individuals. Before we get to that reason, let's not forget. So if this is a nation state hacking attempt, let's not forget, now North Korea is not the only nation state openly engaging in cyber warfare, because they stole about $2 billion worth of Bitcoin in 2025. Kind of wild when you think about it. This is why when we take a peep at the Bitcoin held by nation states, this chart over here, we can see North Korea is, why are they not on this? Okay, so North Korea holds about 12,000 coins. So they are number 5 on this list. They've actually got more Bitcoin than the Kingdom of Bhutan. And we also know, I actually wasn't going to cover this today, but let's not forget what Scott Bessent said a while ago. He said, we're not going to add or buy Bitcoin for the strategic Bitcoin reserve. He laughed at the idea of revaluing gold. But what did he say in this clip that I've showed you guys 100 times? He said, we will continue confiscating assets and adding that to the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Maybe this Chinese report just gives us a little bit more confirmation that this is, in fact, their plan. And Scott Bessent didn't have a little bit of a Freudian slip of the tongue on that Fox News interview. That, again, I'll remind you, he quickly took to Twitter 2 hours later and had to re-clarify himself. And he said, oh, no, actually, even if I did contradict President Trump earlier today, we are embarking on President Trump's mission. Again, strange, really strange. I think he said the quiet parts out loud, but let's not speculate. Let's have a look at what this report is all about from China today. So we can see in mid-2024, this stash of 127,000 Bitcoin was quietly transferred to new wallets. This is what Arkham Intelligence identified. Strange. Now, Beijing is calling this seizure a provocative act. So CVERC's analysis disputes Washington's position that the funds were criminal proceeds. So this is China claiming instead that the US operation may have been linked to the same attackers behind the original theft. All I'm going to say is that I sniff a little bit of nation-state jostling going on right now. And I will, again, I'll point it out. Do you think that China's National Computer Virus Emergency Response Center would be kicking up such a stink over $13 billion? I don't think so. I mean, we saw how much money printed during the 2008 global financial crisis, about $700 billion in that TARP bailout program. Was it Toxic Assets Relief Program? Love the names. So think about it. If they can just willy-nilly print 700 billion out of the thin air and out of the wazoo, do you really think they care about $13 billion? Or do they care about this in particular because it's Bitcoin? We all know you can't print Bitcoin. Maybe that's why we're seeing such a stink being kicked up over this seemingly insignificant amount of fiat money. Because, of course, $13 billion is peanuts. They print that nearly every day. But 127,000 Bitcoin, quick maths tells me it's about, oh no, quick maths. I should have had breakfast. I think it's 0.5% of the supply. Yes, 200,000 coins is 1%. Okay, apologies. It's 6:42 over here. The brain's a little bit slower than usual. But that's a lot of the Bitcoin supply. And I think this context is especially important when we consider this chart. The number of Bitcoin available for sale is absolutely shrinking like a rock. Again, it is my working thesis here that I firmly believe that what we're seeing right now is the biggest, should I call it a suppression? Should I call it an attack? Let me start a little bit more grounded. I think we're seeing the biggest mismatch between the fundamentals and the price of an asset in human history. We've got nation states, the two biggest, most powerful nation states in the world, China and America, fighting over 127,000 Bitcoin. We've got BlackRock quietly accumulating 4% of the total Bitcoin supply in less than 2 years. We've got a publicly traded company, MicroStrategy, quietly buying over 600,000 coins. Again, another 3% of the Bitcoin supply in the past 3 to 4 years. And then at the same time, we see all of this. Price, really? When you factor in inflation? I don't want to be too provocative, but it's not that much higher than it was in 2021. Again, we hit $60,000 a coin in March 2021. It's nearly March 2026, and the thing's only at 100. Do something. We're at $103,000 a coin, and it's November 2025, nearly 4 years later. And when you factor in inflation, and I guarantee you one thing, inflation ain't 2%, much closer to 10%. When you factor in 4 years of 10% inflation, Bitcoin's the new stable coin. It's I've got some interesting data I want to cover for you guys here in a moment that pertains to the bull run and why this bull run is a little bit different. But I don't want to get lost in the sauce too much. All right, we've talked a little bit about what's going on with this hack. I want to talk about the Jack Ma connection, because this, again, this is just some more variables that makes you go, what's happening? Because we know Donald Trump, his family's made a lot of money since they got elected into office. Let's not forget we have the World Liberty Financial. We have, I want to bring up the website. I don't want to butcher the name of the publicly traded company that's now in the top 5 largest Bitcoin treasury companies in the world that is owned by the Trumps. So it's Bitcoin Standard Treasury Company. I believe, oh no, it's not. Apologies. It's Trump Media and Technology Group. They're the 11th largest Bitcoin holder in the world. That company has 11,000 coins. Let's not forget, we know privately, I think there's a reason that our man here, I'm going to call him Young Trump, Baron Trump, has about $150 million net worth. Again, everybody's writing articles about this. How does a 19-year-old have a lazy $150 million? I don't know. But the story I'm trying to paint here is that this isn't just nation state versus nation state. This is tycoon versus tycoon. This is billionaire versus billionaire. This is some of the most powerful people in the world, and they all seem obsessed with Bitcoin. So the whole Trump family is all in. And then we've got Jack Ma. Now, this is where things get a little bit more interesting. Jack Ma's rumored to be worth about 31 billion. Again, would he be worth more if he didn't disappear for a few months? Makes you wonder. I also... Let me just pause for a minute. I don't want to get lost in the sauce or say something too controversial. Be very careful. Just had a quick look. I can publicly say this. Okay, so the founder of Alibaba returns 5 years after largely disappearing from public view. In 2020, mind you, as well. Could be a coinky dink, but that's interesting timing. So he largely disappears for 5 years. One of the richest men in China. Oh boy. I didn't know this. This could make more sense. It says here on Google that he's a philanthropist. Oh boy. Well, if you know, you know. You know what that means. All I'm going to say is I think it's a beautiful thing that people give money, but it's when people start advertising the fact that they're philanthropists, just look at those who are the biggest self-indulging, self-proclaiming philanthropists around the world. Bill Gates, George Soros. They're just big philanthropists. I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions about that. Anyway, what I think is interesting, aside from speculations, is Jack Ma has come back and he's interested in Bitcoin. Sadly, he's actually interested in Ethereum, which is kind of horrifying. But what I think is interesting about Jack Ma is he's been interested in quote-unquote blockchain for a long time. So we can see here, this is an article from yours truly. Well, it's not me, but it's an article from the World Economic Forum, everybody's favorite NGO, non-government organization. Who elected these people? We can see Jack Ma's Alibaba has launched a blockchain-based payment service in 2018. Think about that timing. What happened in 2019? Didn't Zuckerberg from Facebook try to create the Libra token? What happened? Oh, he got dragged in front of Congress real quick. Muy rápido. He was in big trouble for trying to create his own money. This is 2019. Jack Ma does the same in 2018. And then he goes on a 5-year hiatus in 2020. I don't know. I'm just putting some dots together. I'm just drawing conclusions that may not be there. Again, granted. But I do think all of this is interesting. So we have one of the more powerful, richer people in China disappearing for 5 years, coming back. And now this is where things get interesting. He was interested in quote-unquote blockchains in 2018. Again, in an article on the World Economic Forum's website. Boy, how many coincidences before you can start just drawing the lines between the dots yourself. But we can see Alibaba's founder's financial firm has purchased 10,000 Ethereum for Web3 expansion. Come on, Jack. What What are you doing buying Ethereum? Okay. Again, put aside the fact that he's buying inferior digital vaporware. I just think it's interesting. He's waded into the space. So we can see here the financial services firm disclosed the purchase of 10,000 ETH tokens through a voluntary, or was that 5-year disappearance voluntary? Who knows? A voluntary announcement to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. It's interesting. That's all I'm going to say. I think this, you know what they say? If it looks like a duck, and it walks like a duck, sounds like a duck, maybe it's a duck. I think there's something here. There's something here that's the real story behind the news headlines that I want you guys to pay attention to. And the fact that China is going to the effort of publicly writing reports calling out America, I think this is fascinating. And maybe, and again, I've been speculating for 4 years, the reason why that 2021 bull run was cut short was that it was purely to let the big boys buy up a Bitcoin position. That's the thesis. The thesis is they're coming for your Bitcoin. Now, what's interesting about this particular story is we've got two conflicting narratives. We've got Arkham Intelligence saying that the wallets were compromised. So let's rehash what I said earlier. These wallets were compromised due to weak random number generation, not a state-led attack. What does that mean? What is a random number generator? I'm glad you asked. Hardware wallets are supposed to have random number generators inside. Every time you ask for a new seed phrase or a new 12 or 24 word backup phrase, the random number generators inside spits out a new seed phrase for you. Now, what's interesting is that Arkham Intelligence and others, open source blockchains forensics, do we call them the real criminals? But they are saying, look, we had weak random number generation. That's the issue. At this stage, we don't know what's going on. All we know is, like we showed you earlier, Bitcoin is on the move from these addresses. This is the one thing that's confirmed. But I think it raises a pretty good point. Hardware wallets are great. Don't get me wrong. If you don't have a hardware wallet, check out a Trezor or a Ledger. Both hardware wallets, great options. They're linked down below. But it raises an issue with a single signature wallet. What if something goes wrong with a hardware wallet? What if a criminal gets their hands on your hardware wallet? Or even better, I know I have one of these around here. One of these. Your 12 or 24 words. What happens in that scenario? This is why I like multi-signature setups where you can create your own Bitcoin wallet or Bitcoin vault, where to move Bitcoin out of it, you need to sign a transaction from 2 out of the 3 keys, or 3 out of the 5, or 25 out of the 75. You can choose how to create your own wallet or create your own multi-signature setup, or, for example, a time-locked Bitcoin vault or Bitcoin wallet. This is why I love what Bitvault has created. They've got a super easy application that allows you to set up a Bitcoin time-locked wallet literally in minutes, and you can choose how long that wallet is locked for. I first played around with a 1 hour time-locked Bitcoin wallet, chucked $100 in there. An hour later, I could move Bitcoin. It's pretty cool. So, of course, you can choose an hour, a day, a week, a month. Maybe you want to lock that wallet for 2 decades until your kids have graduated high school. This is why I like time-locked Bitcoin wallets, because they take care of this potential vulnerability that I think most people don't even think about. So again, if you want to check out Bitvault, highly recommend you check them out. Right now, they're running a pre-sale. So they're running a massive offer that ends on November 28th, mind you, where they've got a 1 yearly pass. So you get access to the application for a year, and that's going to set you back $119. Again, that offer runs out on November 28th. So check out that link down below for Bitvault and protect your Bitcoin so that you don't end up like the government of China, who is right now having to resort to writing reports begging America to give back their Bitcoin. Because again, this is the beautiful thing about Bitcoin. Once it's gone, baby. Ultimate sovereignty and ownership. Financial ownership. Somebody says it's, a lot of people talk about freedom go up technology. So I believe somebody called it responsibility go up technology. I think my friend Alex Svetsky first talked about that years and years ago. It is responsibility, that's a tongue twister, go up technology. That is what it is. Now let's talk a little bit more about this specific attack and the accusations being labeled. So it's, the mining pool's name is Lubian Mining Pool. And this apparently all happened in 2020. Now, again, this will be one of the biggest seizures in history when it comes to Bitcoin seizures. And look at when it quietly went down, 2020. Now, again, we don't have information about how this attack happened. Was it remote? Was it in person? Couldn't find the information about that. So I'm just speculating. But what I will say is 2020 was an interesting year. A lot of people were talking about America and China and, what do they say, bat soups and all sorts of stuff, right? Just saying, it's an interesting timing of events here. Could all be a coincidence. But what I do think is interesting is this chart right here. So again, it's my mental model that since 2020, the Bitcoin market's been different. That's all because of this chart here. For the first time in Bitcoin's life, we're seeing consistent supply suffocation. Now, that doesn't mean price has to go up tomorrow because coins left the exchanges today. Never meant that. But what we've seen is a consistent long-term trend, a change in the market. Fundamentally, Bitcoin has changed. Fundamentally, coins are now leaving the exchanges. Somebody's buying them and taking them off the exchange. It's as simple as that. So there's a shift in the market. And then at the same time, the Bitcoin price is also acting completely differently. If you doubt that, I'll remind you, the Bitcoin price hit an all-time high before the halving. Again, this has never happened before in Bitcoin history. I believe the halving was somewhere around here. It was Q2. Oh, look at all those lines. My Lord. Get the squigglies off, Luke. Let me get you a clean chart. All right, no squigglies. Oh, there's a couple of squigglies on this one. Apologies. So this red line here, the one I'm moving around, this is when the ETFs were launched. This is when we hit an all-time high. And this big squiggly here, that I believe is when we had the halving. So we never hit a new all-time high before the halving. Confirmation. Something's different this time. Maybe someone was quietly trying to get their hands on a ton of Bitcoin just before their ETF launched. Yours truly, Larry Fink and BlackRock. Just an idea. Maybe the billionaires knew that the bull run was coming. And they tried to buy as much Bitcoin as they could without letting the price really rip. Now, this is the other thing that is kind of interesting. Zen also raises a good point. Maybe the reason is the op return BS from the core devs. I honestly don't know. There's a reason I haven't made a video on the whole op return debate right now happening in Bitcoin. I just don't have a strong opinion on it. And I'm not a technical expert. I think it's interesting. It's a really interesting story. If you guys want me to cover it, I'll cover it one day. But I've also seen the rumors that, you know, price has been a little bit weak since we saw, what was it, core version 30 with that recent update. I've seen the rumors. I haven't covered it because I just haven't found enough meat on that bone, so to say. So again, thanks for chiming in there, Zen. If you guys want to see it, I'll do it. I'll make a video on it. But what I do think is interesting is the Bitcoin price is acting kind of different. I like how this gentleman on Twitter framed it. Cockroach season. What he's alluding to is that the corrections in Bitcoin, they're playing out over a much longer time frame. They're boring people to death. Now, what's really interesting about corrections is typically they will shake out all of the sellers through a correction in price or a correction in time. The correction will just bore people to death and they'll just sell. They're like, oh, kind of like what I was talking about at the beginning of today's live stream. I was like, guys, we were 60K in early 2021. We're at 108K today after at least 4 years of consistent inflation at 10%. Again, people hear me say that 10% figure. Where do I get it from? Let me show you the real inflation figure, because a lot of people will be saying, Luke, what do you mean? Why are you talking about numbers that are incorrect? Let me show you something. Okay, so this here is shadow stats. Now, shadow stats simply measures inflation the way our governments used to measure them before they started bastardizing the measurements and how they actually came to the statistics. You can see back in 1982, the blue and the red line was completely linked. So the blue was how the government measured inflation in 1980, and the red is how the government measures inflation today. Look at how those gaps just widen. That's because the government has made more and more updates to how they measure inflation. And surprise, surprise, they never come out and say, oh, actually, we're understating inflation. Never. They always come out and manipulate it lower. Steak goes from $10 a kilo to $20 a kilo, and the CPI will come out and say, yeah, actually, why don't we swap steak out of the basket of food that the everyday home normally has to eat? Let's swap it out for ground beef or something cheap. Meat pies filled with chicken necks. They'll say, oh, it's meat. It's equivalent. So the meat pie full of all the trash meat, oh, that's $10 a kilo. So there's no inflation here. That's what they'll say. Ignore the fact that the steak went from $10 to $20 and then $40. We're just going to swap the steak out of the basket and swap it in for ground beef. This is how all of the adjustments in the CPI happen. And this is why you see this big widening gap. Just another reason we should never trust the bureaucrats. But again, that's what I mean. When I'm talking about 10% inflation, real inflation is 10%. So if you look at 10% inflation from 2021, 2022, 2023, 24, and 25, Bitcoin's essentially a stable coin, which is the kind of sad thing as someone who saves all their money in Bitcoin. We've gone sideways, but I want to talk about why these corrections are getting longer and more sideways in a moment. Again, I'll just remind you, if you want to get some stable coins in your wallet, and if you do want to get some Bitcoin, I always encourage you guys to learn more about mining Bitcoin. I think it's the best way to get your hands on Bitcoin without having to go trust our friend Larry Fink or Coinbase, our Goldilocks. Please, if you're going to use an exchange, at least buy it and get off the exchange immediately. I know most people don't do that, which is why I encourage you guys just to mine the Bitcoin from day one. I think Blockware Solutions is the best place for you guys to get set up with mining. They have a hosted mining solution set up. You can buy the Bitcoin mining rigs directly from them. And also, by the way, capture a 100% write-off on the cost of the mining hardware in a tax year if you're an American. Again, learn more, book a call with the guys at Blockware if you do want to learn how you can get started mining Bitcoin today. I think it's the best way to get your hands on Bitcoin without having your identity attached to it. Again, these criminals in my government, the UK government, the European government, all over the world, they are coming for your Bitcoin. That's clear. If you mine the Bitcoin, they don't know you own it. It's a positive. Learn more about mining. Because I can guarantee you. What's the quote? I'm kicking myself. I can't remember it. You guys in the chat will remind me. What's the quote? There's nothing more certain in life than death, taxes, and there's another one. You guys in the quote will remind me in the chat. You guys let me know. What is that quote? But taxes are coming and they will be increased. I keep talking about this. Haven't made a video on this, but I want to show you what happened recently in France. Again, so many people say, Luke, don't you think it's a bit extreme that you're never going back to Australia? My mental operating model since 2021 has been that over-indebted Western nations will introduce things like citizenship-based taxation. People call me crazy. There's only 2 countries around the world that have that, America and Eritrea. Well, guess what? Now France is thinking about rolling it out. I saw this. I haven't made a video on it, but you can see it's somewhat recent, October 23rd. French lawmakers adopt measure for citizenship-based taxations. More countries move towards citizenship-based taxation. Why? It doesn't have to be a conspiratorial. My worldview is built on basic economics. The Western world is more indebted than ever before, and the countries with the most debt and the most tyrannical. Look at Australia. Boy, 2 years of lockdowns. Canada, New Zealand, France, Spain, Portugal, Italy. I was in Portugal and Italy recently. I can tell you, not places I want to be living. Keep it as simple as that. Canada, the blue states in America, where you see more debt, you see more control. It's simple, because the only way a government pays back debt is by normalizing more control. Capital confiscations, wealth taxes, unrealized gains taxes, higher taxes, business taxes, property taxes, or, as we have in Australia and the UK, unused bedroom taxes, or, as America recently talked about this week with Donald Trump, 50-year mortgages, so that you pay property taxes to the state for 50 years instead of 30. Again, I think a lot of these narratives, they get hijacked with political narratives. Oh, it's the left, it's the right. It's none of that. It's all economics, baby. Everything. And again, don't get me wrong. I've actually got an aluminium tinfoil hat somewhere in my home here. Because, again, I think a lot of conspiracy theories come true, but you don't need to take a conspiratorial lens with all of this madness happening in the world. It's purely economics. And economically, they're going to come after your Bitcoin. Whether you sell it or whether you don't sell it. Again, if you're thinking about selling it, check out the guys at Firefish. They're a Bitcoin peer-to-peer marketplace that lets you never sell your Bitcoin and lets you borrow against your Bitcoin in a safe and verifiably safe way. This is why I love Firefish. You can see, what's this little orange, this is a gray box at the top. Don't trust, verify the Firefish source code. This is the beautiful thing about Firefish and why I've chosen to partner up with them. They've completely open source their entire code base. So you can verify how Firefish uses multi-signature vaults, how the escrow contracts are set up. It's all open source. This is why I love Firefish. If you are thinking about selling your Bitcoin, highly encourage you guys to go and borrow against your Bitcoin. And the cool thing about Firefish, it's not only the fact that they're open source, but they're going to give you guys 30% off your fees when you use the promo code Luke. Again, 30%. This isn't a 0.01 basis point saving. No, 30% off your fees. So check them out. If you're ever thinking about selling your Bitcoin, please do not, again, I'm not a financial advisor, but just look into tax advantages of what can happen when you borrow against your Bitcoin and you never sell it. Zen says study that. Shane, thank you. There are only two things certain in life, death and taxes. There's another good quote that's related to that. There's nothing as permanent as a temporary government measure. It's another one of my favorites. Oh, no, I feel bad for you, All Night Hider. You got this big mug on TV. Apologies. Damn, there's so many of you guys in the comment section. I hate Ethereum. Ethereum is digital fiat. I don't know if you're asking me that, Zen. You know, I'll take any opportunity I can to trash Ethereum or any altcoin. Welcome, Sean. I wonder if you're still here. Apologies if I was late, guys. I was struggling to get set up. You can see why. One of my lights has already gone flat. Yeah, I mean, Swiss bank accounts. Phoenix, my friend, please study Bitcoin. They're all going to zero against Bitcoin. Let me show you guys a chart. I've got a chart. I've got a favorite chart. Important chart. Before I give my little final take on China and America and what is actually happening, before I give you the signal and the noise, let me show you my favorite chart as to why I have the opinions I do about altcoins. Firstly, it's just, this isn't, my opinions on altcoins isn't just deriving from the fact of pure price performance. It's fundamentals, but let's look at price first. So you can see not one altcoin has outperformed Bitcoin for more than a 4-year cycle. I think the only one that has or is close is this one right here. That's Doge BTC. And that, by the looks of it, is actually no longer outperforming Bitcoin for a 4-year period. Okay, that's cool. I don't need to add the Dogecoin caveat like I normally have, because Dogecoin's been trending down against Bitcoin since 2021. Maybe Elon's trying to escape this trade. Because look at this, what's the abnormality, that's a tongue twister, in this chart? This big 4-month pump in January 2021. That was when Elon first announced his Bitcoin buy. Maybe he accidentally bought way too much Dogecoin as well. Just a speculation. Because you can see Dogecoin has literally trended down against Bitcoin for, by the looks of it, over 95% of its time. It's only trended up against Bitcoin for really 4 months. And this is why, from a price perspective, altcoins are noise. It's now all altcoins underperform Bitcoin for the long term, which is why I believe Bitcoin is the only serious thing here. And then just from basic first principles, Bitcoin is the first form of money ever without any rulers who can change its rules. That's the innovation. We've been trying to create money that can't be changed, that can't be printed, or a gold coin that can't have its corners clipped. The same with silver. The same with glass beads in the case of the West Africans in the 1700s. The Europeans could create the glass beads. They had better technology. The biggest problem in human history is we've used forms of money that could be changed by rulers. Bitcoin is money with rules and no rulers. Cryptocurrency is just the same as fiat money. You've got a small handful of rulers who can change the rules. The Solana blockchain, it's been halted 13 times by a set of rulers. Ethereum has had its monetary policy changed 7 times by a lone ruler, Vitalik. Again, I could go on and on. I could go on and on and on and on. That's my thoughts on altcoins. Let me give my thoughts on China. I think something interesting is developing here between China and America. Again, pay very close attention to this story. I think it's fascinating. China wouldn't be taking the time of day to publish reports and go after America if nothing was happening. Again, Occam's razor, sure. As Arkham Intelligence outlined, maybe there was a problem with their weak random number generator in a wallet. I think that's unlikely. But it raises the concern once again of not having a secure Bitcoin setup. Again, if you don't have a hardware wallet, Ledger and Trezor are the go for your hardware wallets. Both are the easiest to use hardware wallets in the space. Again, once you've got your Bitcoin in one of these, a hardware wallet, please take the next very important step. Put your 12 or 24 words on titanium. Again, these plates from Stampseed should be the industry standard. I actually think they are the industry standard. I think Stampseed's been around longer than most metal companies. Go the next step. Punch your Bitcoin 12 or 24 words into titanium. Stampseed's going to give you guys 15% off if you use a promo code Luke15. So take advantage of that so you don't end up like this Chinese mining pool who we don't know yet. We don't know the exact details of this story, but they have 127,000 less Bitcoin than they had in 2020. $13 billion worth. I think this is a wild story. Pay very close attention to what's going on with China. I will say that. And with that said, guys, so that's 700 of you guys tuning in between Twitter and YouTube. I might end this one here. If you enjoyed this one, subscribe so you're notified the next time I go live. You might have noticed I'm not going live as frequently as I have been previously over the past couple of months. Because to be quite honest, with the price being dead, the news cycle's been horrific. There's honestly been nothing interesting to talk about until I saw this story this morning. So apologies for the 47-minute stream, but I used to be going live every day, and I think I've only been live 3 or 4 times in this month. So again, subscribe if you do want to be notified when I go live. I only go live when I've got something super interesting to talk about. So with all that said, guys, I'm going to end this one here. And if you want some more Bitcoin content, I also did a deep dive looking at what is going on in Europe because we're seeing more madness talked about over there. I might put a link to that video somewhere around there. So check that out if you do want more content. And with all that said, as Chris says in the chat, peace. I'll see you guys in the next one.